All right, I see my bubble on the screen, so let's move things forward. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Leah Smalley. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Services at the Coordinating Board. And today I do have Laura DeGrush with me, and we'll be co-presenting this month's last webcast of the year. I went back the other day and I saw that this is the 4th year that I've been doing these webcasts, and it just blew my mind how quickly time goes by. So this is the last one for this particular calendar year, and then we'll be picking up next year. We'll send out some notices on when that will occur. We are looking to change up the webcast a little bit, and we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but we have gotten tons of great feedback from y'all. But we also want to make sure that we're keeping things new and interesting and providing information that's going to be fresh and helpful. So more to come on that, but just wanted to thank you again month after month for joining us. If you're new, I'm very excited that you're here, and we will be pointing you in the direction to find our archived webcast in just a minute. So let's take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. And let me make sure that my computer is working. There we go. All right, so our topics of discussion are going to primarily center around two main things. One is financial aid database, and the other one is going to be the online TASPA. So we are going to focus first and foremost on cycle 3 for FADS and make sure that we give you any tips and tools to get through this cycle. And then more importantly, I'm going to be talking about the FADS modernization project. And if you've been with us for a while, you may have caught wind of this, that we are moving to a new way of doing FADS. And so this is going to be a good overview to explain what that looks like and then kind of what to expect on when it's going to roll out. Then I'll turn it over to Laura after that, and she'll be going through online TASFA updates. Laura has been instrumental in the development of the online TASFA, along with several others at the coordinating board, including myself. So I wanted her to be able to share some things with y'all so that you can stay up to speed on where things are at. And then lastly, we'll be going into some reminders, updates, and deadlines. And then as always, if we have questions left at the end, then we'll circle back and go through those. So at any point, if you do have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer them real time. Because I don't have Deshay Reed on today, then that leaves Laura and I fielding those questions. So if there's a little bit of a lag, just bear with us and we'll get to those. All right, so let's get started with FADS. I feel like this is something that we do at the end of each year and for good reason. So financial aid database is a 3-cycle process, and we have done various trainings throughout the years on FADS, specifically related to reconciliation and cycle 3. That's the one where this happens the most, and it is the most complicated. So now we are in the 3rd cycle, which started on September 28th, and the deadline is quickly approaching, which is December 5th this year. Now you may be wondering, wait a minute, I thought it was later in the year. It always is, and that is correct. It's usually mid-December, but because we have a legislative session coming up and because there tends to be such a lag on getting data, there was a discussion to move up that date with our committee and other stakeholders so that we can get your data in more timely. It also runs up on the holidays most years, which does delay us getting the information we need. Now, we do have the legislative session starting in January, so the FADS data is very, very critical that we get that in so that we can provide information to legislators to make decisions on policy changes and statutory changes. It also influences your allocations on when we can get those out, because we do use the data for the allocation process. So all of these factors go into us bumping up the date a little bit this year in hopes that we can get those certified and we can get all the data we need. But I did look at the calendar earlier and I was like, well, it's about 6 weeks left. And we also looked at how many schools have actually submitted a file, and there haven't been that many at this point. So we do encourage you to start submitting your file so that you can figure out how many errors you have. And of course, the biggest piece in cycle 3 is your reconciliation. Now, if you're new to FADS, reconciliation is our way of making sure that the data that you send us matches the money and the totals that we paid out to you as an institution. So that's why there is that process needed to make sure that all of the numbers line up. Now, about 2 weeks ago, there was an issue with one of the reports that has been resolved. A notice was sent out. And so you should be able to go through the process now and get those files through. All the reports should be working. So let's talk about reconciliation. Again, if you need help with reconciliation, one of the best things to do is going to be to go back and look at last year's webcast, which was in October of 21, I believe. And then we also did a fairly extensive one the year prior in November of 2020. And I would not be surprised if you go back to 2019 and there's one in there. So every year we do information related to reconciliation. So I did not really want to focus that much on it since we have so many webcasts dedicated to the topic. But really this year I wanted to point out what were the minimal changes that you're going to see, and so that you're aware of those. So the first one is the form itself. You'll notice on the screen that the overall look and feel of the form is different. It's rebranded, different colors, it's simplified. So overall, the form hasn't changed that much. It's just, again, more of a cosmetic look. But what you'll see outlined on the screen here is that when you're doing reconciliation with your regular state grant programs and your B.1.10 grants, all of those are going to be reported in the same data element. But if you have adjustments to make to those on this form, you'll notice that on one line. But when you're adjusting those, there's different ways to do that. So I will not get into the complexity of that on this webcast. If you need assistance with your B.1.10, or if you're confused in any way on how to reconcile that, definitely reach out to us. Now, on the second page of the form, it does have the links on how you will go about returning funds and making adjustments to your totals. Again, if you need some assistance with your reconciliation, this is the most complicated part of FADS. We understand that. And if you get caught up or you're not understanding how to go through the steps, then just reach out and we'll walk you through it. Now, one of the biggest changes this year on reconciliation, outside of the minor changes on the form, is going to be how you submit the form to us. So this year, much like a lot of the things that we're doing, we're using these online submission forms. And the reason we've switched to that is because when you track anything through email, as you can imagine, it's just not very organized. Things get lost, things get deleted, there's no workflow. So we have moved to a Smartsheet platform, which allows not only the institutions to submit things more easily, but then once we receive that data, we can also move it through the process more quickly. So on the screen here, you will be able to send us your reconciliation form, which is what I just reviewed on the screen. In addition, you'll also be able to submit us your student loan detail report. Those are for schools that participate in the College Access Loan or the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program. So in the past, you would have to email us the reconciliation form. You would have to upload the student loan detail back into Move It, and then follow up with us in various forms and fashions. So this year, it's intended to be kind of one step for you, so you can just send it all through this form. Once we get that, not only will you get a confirmation there's a little box at the bottom where you can get a receipt, but then once we get your stuff, we will reach out if there's any issues or questions from our end. So it is a work in progress, but we do think that this will be easier this year for reconciliation. All right. Lastly, oh, that's not last. I've got 2 more slides, sorry. So this year we've gotten a few questions on how to report gear funds, because even though we didn't pay out from financial aid, we didn't pay out any gear funding for FY22, there were other areas within the agency that were sending out those federal funds, such as the reskilling program, and different grants available through gear. And so we have had schools asking, where exactly do we put that? Do we have to report it? And the answer is yes, you do want to report any of your gear related funds that a student received for that fiscal year, which is FY22. If the student got any gear funds, then the data element 66 is kind of the place where you would be able to put any of those funds, and we do not reconcile those. So they do need to be reported, but you're not going to have to do kind of a comparison on any reports or anything like that. So I hope that that's helpful. Again, we do keep getting that question on, like, do we report it? Do we leave it off? And so yes, you report it. Element 66 is where you would want to put those totals. All right, so last thing here is for troubleshooting tips. Now, if you're familiar with FADs, this may be old news, but if you're newer, this may be helpful to you because, again, the FADs process is quite complex, and we understand that, and that's why we are actually trying to make it better for y'all, which we'll go into in just a minute. But in the FADs manual, there is this little troubleshooting banner on the side, so I thought I'd walk through it really quickly with y'all. So when you submit your FADs file to us, if it's been at least 24 hours and you haven't received anything, you got no file receipt confirmation, this is just a friendly tip. Don't keep resubmitting files, because that just kind of delays other schools from submitting, because the way that the files come in, they're processed one at a time. So if you haven't gotten something back, it usually means something is wrong. It's better to reach out to us after you've done these troubleshooting tips. So the first one is make sure that your file format is correct. All FAD files at this point do have to be fixed length. They can't be in any other format. We are looking at future ways to improve the format, but as of right now, the only one we accept is fixed length. So you'll want to check that. The second one there is verify your header and trailer records to make sure that they match up with your file. The criteria for your header and trailer are located in the manual, so you can make sure that all the positions and everything that's needed on that is correct. Otherwise, our program can't read your file. That's kind of the importance of the header and trailer. The third one there is make sure that you're uploading it into the right place. So believe it or not, there's lots of little places in Move It where people tend to upload and move things around, but the home folder is where our program at the coordinating board goes to pick up your file. It's an actual program. So if you put it in any other location, then it just sits there indefinitely. Nothing's going to happen. So what we typically see is that sometimes schools will put it in your output folder, which we understand is confusing. Your FAD output folder is where you retrieve your the reports associated with your FADs. So those are the ones that we send to you. And then we also upload your student loan details in that FAD output. So again, very complicated. We get it. So hopefully these will help as you're going through the steps if you aren't getting any response on your FAD file. The fourth one there is make sure that you have access to the notifications that we're sending. And this is a dedicated email box that you as the institution set up on your end to receive these FAD alerts. So if you're new to FADs, you will need to get with your IT department to identify what mailbox that is on your server or your system. And then definitely make sure that you're checking the spam and junk folders, because if they've set up the system incorrectly, sometimes, as you know, things go to the wrong place. And then lastly, if you still can't figure it out or you feel like something's broken, definitely shoot us an email to FADB. The email is there on the screen, which is fadb@highered.texas.gov. That's the way that we review and solve issues. We don't use our standard like online inquiry form. And if you call us, we'll definitely try our best, but usually they take research. So having it in an email is usually best so that we can have the details and then go into our system and poke around and then get back to you. So that's definitely always a recommendation. So if you are following so far, you have found out that FADS in just a couple of minutes is complicated. So the next part that we're going to go into is why we're trying to make life easier for everybody when it comes to FADS. So I believe it was last October, I did kind of unveil the fact that the coordinating board is trying to move FADS to a new platform. And so I can't believe it's already been a year. Time sure does fly. But today what I'm going to do is give you a sneak peek of what the portal is looking like and explain the overall process on how it will work so that one, you can get excited, and two, kind of conceptualize what it will be like. So let's first look at what is the FADS process? And like I just mentioned, there's different ways that you have to do pieces of the process. So it makes it a little confusing, especially if you're newer and you're trying to read the manual. There's lots of steps. So right now, you have to go into something called Move It DMZ to upload your files and then also download your reports. Like I just mentioned, you have to go to different folders to do those steps. So, and then if you have any of our other programs, you may have even more folders. Once you get to a place where you're to our overrides process, there's another step. You get to send emails back and forth to the coordinating board trying to resolve these override or justifications. So that's another piece of the puzzle. Lastly, once you're kind of done with everything, there's a process in which you go online to another place called CB Pass, where you actually validate or certify your file. And I did not move these forward. That's an example of the email. You have to go back and forth. You can see it has lots of details there. And then last here is the validation or certification online. So as you can see, they all look very different. You have to know exactly where to go and you have to have a login and all of those things. So the goal with the new modernization for this new submission portal is a one-stop shop, or at least that is our goal. And so the way that'll work is in all one place, you're going to be able to access one portal. You'll be able to upload your file. After that, you'll be able to check your submission status in the same location. You'll then be able to review and download your reports from the same place. You'll be able to submit your overrides or what we're calling justifications in that same place. And then lastly, you'll be able to complete your validation and certification, as well as look at prior reports. So it's really going to be wonderful so that you're not bouncing all around the place. We're working hard to update our manual because we know that we've got lots of instructions on where to go in the manual now. And so we're getting that updated for y'all. So let's take a look at the process in general. So the accessing the portal is going to be familiar to some and new to others. So if you are brand new to FADS or your position, our system at the coordinating board is called CB Pass. So you will have to go in and create an account before you'll have access to the submission portal. You'll click the create now, and then it pops up with a registration page. So you'll go in, you'll create an account, and then once you have that account established, this is for all users. So regardless if you're new or old, you will have to sign in to CB Pass by using your credentials. And then on the next screen, you'll go to My Access, and there's a hyperlink that says, click to request access to another application. When you do that and it pops up, there's a little drop-down menu. And in that drop-down, there's something called Data Submission Portal, and you'll request access. Once you are approved, when you go to, oh, I went too fast. Once you are approved, you'll notice on the right-hand side, it says Access Status is Approved. You'll be able to click on the link, which will then launch you into our new portal. On the home screen, here. You can see on your screen, so this is the home page. You'll have to accept our policy and terms and conditions, and then you'll be ready to go into the new process. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk you through high level how it will work, but this is my disclaimer. Don't panic. There's lots of little screens and columns and buttons and all of that stuff. We are preparing more in-depth training. So we will be doing that closer to when we go live with y'all. This is just, again, to give you a sneak peek. All right, so once you are in the actual portal, at the top of the screen, you'll notice a little menu toolbar, and it has various drop downs. And so the first one is the report drop down, and that's where you'll be able to physically upload your file and also check that submission status I mentioned. The second one is going to be where you'll not only get to request your certification, but that's also where you'll do your overrides or justifications and also see your kind of historical reporting. And then lastly there, you have your reporting manual. This is going to be all of the manuals for reports, including CBM, but this is so that you don't have to toggle back and go to our website to find the manual. We'll just have them listed there. So everything all in one place. So let's look at uploading your file and see how much different that is than the current process. So when you log into the portal, like I mentioned, you'll go first to the reports dropdown and you'll click on submit a report. From there, a screen will pop up where you will get to browse for your file. As a reminder, it will still be fixed length for now. We're looking at making that a different format in future releases, but as of right now, that's our current format. Once you have that file, you'll hit upload, and then you'll notice a little message on the screen saying it's uploading your file. It may take a while to upload because some of these files get quite large if you work for a school that has a lot of data. Now, once it's done uploading, you're going to get one of two things. You're going to either get a successful upload, which says, yay, you did it, thank you, we're processing your information. And that's definitely what we want to see, but there are times where you're going to get upload errors, and that's okay because we're creating customized messages to kind of indicate why your file did not upload. Again, we'll provide additional training on what the various errors are going to be and how to resolve those at a later point. From here, once you have actually submitted your file and it's uploaded, you're going to be able to go check the submission status. So on the screen, you can either look at the full list or you can even filter it down to check, because after a while, you're going to have a lot of reports in there if you continually submit. One of the things about this screen is you'll notice that each individual report has a dedicated line with a unique report number. So in this example, 297793, that's for this submission for this copy that you uploaded. So if you do another one, then you would have another line. So eventually you may want to filter it down so you don't have so many. Also on the screen, it has other details, including you'll be able to download a copy of the report you just uploaded. So we get that all the time, like, hey, like, can you look at my file? And we're like, well, not easily. Now you'll be able to log in and download a copy of your file just so you can look at it if needed. The processing status is there on the right-hand side. You'll notice it does say processing. And as much as we'd love for it to be kind of an instantaneous status, just like always, it does take some time to process the file. It should be faster. It still will not be, instantaneous. So you will have to check back every once in a while throughout the day to see if it's been processed. Once it actually goes through and it's been processed, you'll notice that the status is going to flip to submitted. And another thing that you'll see here is that you'll see that same unique number, the 297793, but you'll also see the 3 reports that you would typically download from Move It. They're located on this screen for you. That includes your error report, your reconciliation report, and your program comparison report. These will change depending on the cycle, but in general, that's where you're going to find the reports is on this submission status page. So from here, the really cool thing now is, with the current reports, they're somewhat limited. You have to, every single time you go in, you have to go into Move It. You kind of have to use your excellent vision to find those reports and decipher which one's which. Now it's all on that same screen I showed you. You'll be able to click a hyperlink and it will just launch it right on the screen for you. So you'll be able to look at the report in real time. And you can even download the report now in different formats. So you can do it in Excel, PDF. We have different versions of PDF and even PowerPoint. So I think most schools were requesting Excel. You will have to play with that one a little bit because of how it downloads into the Excel copy. You will want to make sure that if you are not an Excel guru, I would get one to make sure that you filter and sort your information correctly. All right. Once you've downloaded, you'll get a little message on the screen, and then you can always close out that browser and launch a new one or go back to your former screen. Now, this is probably one of the biggest changes I'd say on the new process is that when you are going in to finish your process, you've already done all your student level errors and you're kind of ready to finish out your overrides or what we're now calling justification. You're going to go to the menu to hit request to certify. And if you have anything that's still pending, you'll notice on the screen a little icon that says request certification with a little picture next to it. And when you click on that, a screen's going to pop up that includes anything that has not been cleared yet. And so this is a good opportunity if you see something in there and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't know that that was still an error. You can go back and resolve that, fix it again, resubmit your file. Now, if these truly are the leftovers and these are the ones that you need to submit a justification or override for, you'll be able to do that within the screen for each one that's there. And you'll just simply put in your justification reason, and then there's a scroll bar on the right-hand side where you'll be able to scroll down and enter each of those individually. Now, I wasn't able to put the entire screen on here because we have a scroll bar on our side as well. So I kind of broke it up into different pictures, but there's also at the bottom of the page, there's a justification box where you can enter additional information. And then also there is a upload feature where you can put backup documentation, such as copies of things, emails, student records, whatever you need to do to back up those justifications. You can do that all within the portal now. And then lastly, at the bottom of the screen, you'll have the ability to save and come back, as I'm sure many of you know. Sometimes you can't get through it all in one day, or maybe you're working on it and you have to come back at a later point. You can save it as a draft. And then you can print your draft if you'd like to and have it put it in a file or wherever. But the coolest thing is you'll also have a request to certify button on there. So as you're doing your justifications, you'll also be submitting your certification at the same time. If we have additional questions for you, we will contact you back through the portal and we'll kind of go back and forth as we do now. But we will be collecting your certification during this particular step in the process. Now, in the event oops, I didn't know I had boxes there. In the event you don't have any overrides, then when you go to request to certify, your certification box simply pops up on the screen. You fill it out as you always have, and you click submit. And then once it's reviewed, it would be considered certified. So again, more training on this will come. It's a little bit hard to conceptualize with this particular process because it's still new, but we will be creating instructions on how to do all this. Now, once you've submitted your certification, you will be able to go back and look to see if it's pending or where it's at on the process, and you can still view and look at the justifications you've submitted. So that is one of the options on the screen. I didn't have a picture of a certified report because this is not live yet. We don't have any certified information yet, but down the road, what you'll be able to do is once it's certified, you'll be able to go into this screen and you'll be able to see those certified reports and even pull historical ones from the system if you need to pull that for auditing purposes or just for any type of reference. So that is our sneak peek of the FADS process. I think I saw Deshay answering questions, but if there's any pending ones, I'll be answering those here in a few moments. And at this time, what we're going to do is I am going to turn this over to Laura, and we are going to touch base on the online TASFA, since we know that there's been lots of questions coming through, not only from institutions of higher education, but also K through 12. So we did put this together for y'all to give you kind of an update on where we're at. So Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hi there, I'm Laura, and we'll be walking through the online TASFA and progress made. We will start, let's see if I can get us going here. Yes, looks good. And we'll start with just some reminders here. And again, this may be something that you had a bit of information from the TASFA conference, but in case, this will be a way that we can make sure that we're keeping all our stakeholders aware and up to date on the progress that we have made. You can find an announcement about our online TASFA and its delay. You can find it in our memo section and also on our latest news section of the main page of the Student Financial Aid Programs. That message was sent out on August 26th. Now, with this delay, we will have more time in this extension, and that should enable us to really bolster our training and our available insurance that everything transmits well. So this will give us more time to train different stakeholders, including educators, higher education institutions, students and families, counselors. And then also this will give us more time to ensure that data will be received well and transmitted well to institutions and to have those practice files. So with all that in mind, just please note, stay tuned. We will keep you up to date with any milestones, any release date changes, or any other news related to the online TASFA. This way we'll stay in touch with keeping you up to date. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk a bit more about the submission of the online TASFA. And with the online TASFA, you may have seen this flowchart before, but we'd like to make sure that it's clear how the online TASFA will work. And let's get started with thinking about the student. So when the student's ready to fill out an online TASFA, they can find a copy of the online TASFA different ways to get to the portal. It may be through Apply Texas. It may be through the College for All Texans website. It could be that they're searching through Google, but they'll find a way to the online TASFA, and then they can create that account. And when they do so, they'll start by looking at their student information. There'll be a full section just on student information. And once they fill out that information, they'll also hit a dependency section. Now, in this dependency section, they'll answer questions that will determine if they're independent or dependent. Let's see first what happens if the student is independent. They'll fill out the student section, they'll fill out their dependency section, and they won't see the parent section. But what they will see, the next section available will be the college section, where after filling out their information, they can go to the college section and they'll at least need to submit and choose one college, but they can choose up to 10 colleges per submission. So they'll be able to select their colleges. And then once they do that, the student can then, as an independent student, sign and submit their TASFA. Now, if the student is dependent during that dependency section, the questions themselves that they answer will have the parent section appear. And if the parent section appears, the student will fill out the parent information and go through the parent section. And then they'll have to put in a parent email. And with that, the parent will be emailed a secure link to access the parent section or the online TASFA overall as a read copy, and they'll be able to sign for their portion for the parent's signature. So if the parent does need to sign, if the student is dependent, after the parent signs, the student would then go back in and ensure that they're all set to sign, and they would go ahead and sign and submit their TASFA. So those are the steps, and just depending on the scenario, it could be different if they're independent or dependent and what the student has to fill out. But assuming they've filled it all out and they've signed and submitted, then that data goes to the THECB, to our TASFA database, which would be through Move It. And Move It will be creating a nightly batch to compile that TASFA information from that day, and it does so at night. And two things will happen. Part of that data will go to counselors through the counselor suite, and it only will be a subset of that TASFA data specific to the requirements related to proving the graduation requirements. So only a little bit of that data required will go to the counselor suite. And then also during that nightly batch that gets run, the institution will also, that the student chooses, or various institutions, if the student is choosing more than one, will also receive that data, and it will be the entire set of that TASFA data. And when they do, it will be sent to the institutional folder for TASFA for Move It. So it goes to the institution. It doesn't go to all institutions, only the institutions that the student has selected. So that's a little bit about how the online TASFA will flow. Let's think a bit more about the data itself that the institution will receive. Now, we do have available, and as this is just a reminder, as we've looked at this before, we do have available our file layout, and we do intend to have test files for institutions. They haven't been sent yet, but we do intend to send them. For now, you can see the TASFA file layout, and it's available on our program resources page of our Student Financial Aid programs. And going to it, you will see this copy of the document for the file layout that has some basic information of what to expect from the file that will be sent, and the actual file itself and the example of that record layout. So if you're familiar with the FAFSA record layout, this should look very similar. It will give you a sense of what number the question is coming from, the field, the basics of its length and where it starts and finishes, what it is, for example, that field name, what question it's referring to, and what sort of content that you'll expect to see. Now for this, all you have to do is consume this data, and it's not something, since we were just talking about fads, where you have to create it and make sure that it fits the content. Here, you're just receiving it. So in a way, it's a bit simpler. You don't have to create this file, but you'll have to consume it in one form or another, if that helps to think of. Now with this file, here is an example, whoops, of a fixed file format. This will be just like FADS in a fixed file format, and you'll have the record layout file to have for comparison, to know what you're reading and what it will look like. So this is what will be sent to institutions. Now, where it will be sent, we did mention Move It DMC, and there will be a TASFA output folder for this file, and it will be a fixed length file, but there also will be an opportunity for a CSV file. So that will be available in that folder. There'll be a nightly batch for this, and it'll be cumulative for the award year. So you will receive that. It'll be available for each time a student is filling out the application and submits and completes it. Only when it's completed will you receive this nightly. So that's a bit on the file processing in itself. And now with that in mind, I do want to do a walkthrough of what the application looks like. And this is a mock-up. And speaking still of data, this is a mock-up of the home page where the student, after finding the online application, will click on this Apply Now button, and that is where the data commences. So that's where we start capturing data. And so this will be part of a home page. And now we're going to walk through each of the different sections and have a bit of a sense of what a student or user will experience. So from that home page where they start into the data, they will go into the application page. Now this page will be dynamic in nature. If a student hasn't applied yet, they'll see a start button in green so that they can start the application. And for this time around, they'll only see application year 2023-24. But in the future, they'll also have choices between different applications as more applications are available. And you'll also note there is an application ID. Those will be distinct to each application per student that gets filled out. So that will be a distinct number that will be useful to have so that you're aware of that too. Now, say if they've already started to fill out the application, the start button will turn into a resume button. And so they'll be able to click resume and go back into the application because that data is saved. And once they've submitted the application, they can go back to this application page and then also click on submit application to additional colleges. Now, this may be a case of a student realizes, I need to submit to 1 or 2 more colleges, or even up to 10. They can submit 10 colleges per submission. So they can use that button to go back in, and they won't be able to change information, but they will be able to apply to additional colleges. So that is our application page. Let's jump right in to our instruction section. So we will be going consecutively through each section, but a student will just, depending, be able to look at different sections just to know what's there. The application is dynamic, so depending on what is answered, different information may be displayed. So it is beneficial, and they can start with the instructions to see what is available and what they'll need to answer. On this instruction page, they'll get a basic sense of how to navigate through the site and how to save. And they'll also get a sense of what may be required or where to find helpful information. So that will be the instruction section. And then we'll jump into the student section. So if a student's dependent or independent, this will be a necessary section. They'll have to fill out this information. The information is almost all required. There are some that may be optional, and there may be some skip logic in different questions, just depending on how a student answers. So here, for example, there may be some skip logic on if the selective service questions are displayed, or if the, for example, spouse information is displayed. These will all just depend on how the student answers certain questions. This section will also have high school information, and that will be essential for the reporting of the graduation requirement related to filling out the TASFA and collecting the specific high school and their information. So that will also happen and be captured in this section. So that is the student section there. And again, it's dynamic in nature with skip logic. But let's hop into the dependency section. Now, this section is also dynamic and has skip logic, and some of the answers that the student put into the student section actually do pre-populate into the answers for the dependency section. And there will be some help icons available to help the student navigate that. So depending on what's answered, the dependency section will be possibly pre-populated there. And in terms of how a student answers the dependency section, say if they answer all no to all the dependency questions, then the parent tab will appear and they will be determined as dependent. Now, if a student answers one of these questions as yes, or one happens to be a pre-populated answer as yes, then that student will be determined independent and they will not see the parent section. So the parent section is very dynamic in nature. Let's hop over to the parent section then. The parent section does have skip logic also. For example, depending on if the parent is married, they will see parent 2 either will appear or disappear, and similar information such as income or tax related information, depending on some of the answers, will also appear or disappear with that skip logic in mind. And an important part of the parent section will be the parent email. And the parent must have an email and it must be distinct from the student's email in order to be able to e-sign. So the parent will have a specific email distinct from the student, and they'll put that in here. And so once the information's filled out in the parent section, then there's also a college section, and we'll go into deeper, we'll do a deeper dive into the parent section in a second here. But say if that student is independent or if they're dependent, whether or not they've gotten to everything yet, they still can get to this college section. Maybe they're very excited all the way from the beginning and have a couple of colleges or schools in mind, so they can go ahead and input that information. They can select their college and there'll be a table and drop down here, and then they'll also be able to fill in distinct information per each college. So they'll have to choose a housing status for each school that they select, and they must select at least one. And then they also will be able to optionally put in a college student ID. Now, this is optional, but will be encouraged so that it can help match a student account for the institution. And here, say if a student's going through the list will be dynamic. They'll be able to see the available colleges and what's available, and then also which they've already selected. And say if they select a college that they decide is not one that they want to finally send, they can remove that college, and the list of available colleges and selected colleges will remain dynamic in nature and will adjust each time that a school is added or removed. And again, they'll be able to select up to 10 for colleges when they submit this time. So with that in mind, let's look a little bit deeper into the signature section here. And say if they're going through the application, the student can see what they haven't filled out. Once they go to the signature section, they can see if there are errors, they can see if they need to go back or if there's anything holding them up from submitting this application. So this will be a great way to check through and make sure everything's set. And if it is, they'll be able to click the certification statement acknowledgement box. So they'll be able to click this and they'll see which schools that they've selected. They'll be able to sign at the using their finger or a mouse, and then they'll be able to click the green sign and submit application button. And so that will have it signed and submitted. But so this would just be if the student's independent, they can go ahead and go through those steps. We'll also look at if a student will need a parent signature. So that's just a bit of a sense of what signing and submitting will look like for a student, especially in the case of an independent student. But let's also look at and examine what a dependent student may need. So they've filled out all their information, and once they've validated everything's correct and they don't have errors, they'll be able to send an email to the parent that they put in the file in the field for parent email, and they'll be able to send that secure link, and they can continue sending it as necessary. They'll be able to see if it was sent, but they can keep sending it until the parent has signed in case that parent needs a reminder or in case that email gets lost. So that will be available that way for a dependent student to send an email to their parent. And that email will look a bit like this. And the parent will be able to click on the parent signature process button through the email, and that will send them a specific validation, and it will be a 3-point check validation to be able to sign the student's application. So it'll capture a few different fields specific to that student, and then they'll be able to go in and they'll be able to sign. So in this, when the parent goes in, they'll have a read-only access to the application, and they'll be able to review all the different sections as read-only, and then they can go ahead and sign. They can use the same features of signing by hand or with mouse, and then they'll click, and they'll also get a validation window that will come up and a follow-up email for that proof that they have signed. But we're not set yet, so the parent has signed for a dependent student. We also need the student to sign. So here we have that same signature section that we saw before in an independent case. And if there aren't any errors, we've already had the parent sign, and then we'll be able to have that student click on the certification. They'll see the schools that they have applied to. They'll be able to sign and then click, oops, sorry there, and click on the submit application. And they'll also get a pop-up that they've signed, and then also an email validating that they've signed and submitted. So that's a bit on the signature section, but let's talk a little bit more about proof. Now, we talked about in the beginning the application year page, and here, when a student gets to this page, they'll be able to see a couple of things. They'll be able to see what schools they've applied to and when, and then they'll also have specific copies of their TASFA application with their information filled out. So it'll look a bit like this, where that information will be filled out and completed, and it will be a PDF form that they can save or print. So that will be a great option for students. Now, say if they realize already that they're ready to go back in and submit to additional schools, they can go ahead and do so. They won't be able to change that information as we discussed, but they can submit to additional schools, and that'll appear on their list with a specific copy of their PDF per each school that they submit to. So a little bit there. And okay, and that's that option about submitting. And let's just talk a little bit on the overall dynamic features of the application. And this is a bit of a reminder in terms of something that we may have discussed before with y'all. The application will be dynamic in nature in terms of being able to show up well on a smartphone, an iPad, or a laptop. So it will be versatile in nature. And it will have save features, so that should really enable things to not be lost and be as least complicated as possible. And so everything will be pretty easy to navigate. And in terms of ease of navigation, we hope to have we will have our help icons ready to go that will provide additional clarification, and they'll mirror the FAFSA and Align very closely. so that a student can walk through and understand how to answer questions, and it'll be right by the question, so easy to use. Now, that was quite a lot of information on the online TASFA, and I'm sure we've got good questions here in the chat. But we will go ahead and continue on to our reminders and updates and deadlines section here. So in terms of something up and coming soon, we do have a new forward loan program, and you'll be learning more about this as we go. So forward is actually an acronym, and it's for Future Occupations and Reskilling Workforce Advancement to Reach Demand. So this forward loan will have some unique qualities, and a couple of important aspects of it are that it'll have a lower interest rate than the college access loan, the CAL loan. And for borrowing limits and repayment, they'll be tied to the manageable debt goal. And in terms of eligibility, that'll be tied to high value, high demand credentials. So the idea of this is very tied to the Talent Strong Texas, and it has specific targets in mind, and it's part of an overall goal to get, oops, sorry there. There we go. We've got a sneak preview to get a more students ready to be able to have a job that will be high in value, as I was mentioning, but without the amount of debt that can come sometimes from different programs. So this will only be available for certain credentials, but moving forward, it will have more options available. As of right now, this is not available yet, but it is something that we wanted to bring to your attention as soon as possible so that you're aware that it is an up and coming program, and we'll have more information on it coming soon. So that's a little bit on the forward loan. So let's talk about our reminders and updates and deadlines here overall. In terms of reminders, as we mentioned during our FAD discussion earlier, we do have a FAD reconciliation form and submission link that is new, and it's through instead of doing everything through a PDF, it's through the online link that Leah was mentioning. So that is available. In terms of other updates that are new, we do have a latest news section on our Student Financial Aid Programs website, and that will highlight different alerts and reminders, anything that we want to draw to your attention. And usually you can find those in our Stay Connected section, but you'll also be able to see them here in terms of what's most pressing. So that will be right on our Student Financial Aid Programs homepage, or our main page. Now, in terms of different upcoming deadlines, we wanted to make sure, since this is our last webcast for the year, that we cover all the way till the end of the year. And our most pressing deadline is for the state campus-based report for fiscal year 2022, and that is due this Friday of October 28th. So very up and coming. And in terms of November, we will have more information about this coming soon, but we have our deadline to submit a user access institutional role survey. And again, we will be sending more information about this. So that will be great so that we can really refine our effectiveness and security for our portals. And in terms of December, we have, as Leah was mentioning, our FAD Cycle 3 is December 5th. That's when it's due, and there's really not that much time between now and then. So it'll be great to get started on that as soon as you can. And lastly, the deadline was extended for legislators to nominate a student for the Texas Armed Services Scholarship Program. So this was extended to December 31st. And what that means for you is that you'll most likely still see rolling in students with eligibility letters that'll still be coming in. So that will be something to look for. Okay, so that's our most pressing reminders and updates. And say if you have a follow-up question about this webcast or anything else, there's a couple of ways to stay in contact with us. Now, for the general public, we do have our borrower services line for borrowers and cosigners, and that's 800-242-3062. And in terms of general information, we do have our Texas Financial Aid Information Center, a public line at 888-311-8881. And for institutions, we do have a special line just for institutions only, and that is 844-792-2640. Now, our lines are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and are closed daily at lunch, 12 to 1. You're also welcome to send in a contact us inquiry, and that can be great for having a response in writing. Sometimes it's very good and or even essential to have something in writing. And we'll talk about how to best do that here. And this is something we always cover just in case, because it's so important that these contact us inquiries get routed the right way so that we can answer them as soon as possible. And in terms of what to put, make sure that you put that you're an institution just to distinguish from a student or a parent or anyone else. And then put the full name of your institution. Make sure to select financial aid question so that it gets sent to our office instead of potentially to a different office, and then it'll take a little bit of time to get back to us. You can put your question and try to be as clear as possible so that we can answer you, but just in case we are unsure of anything, please do put a direct phone number so that we can get back in touch and get any clarity that we might need. Okay, well, that is our contact us inquiry. Now, as I'm sure we'll need, we're going to set aside some time for questions. And I see that many are answered in the chat, but just in case, I may invite Leah to see if there are anything that we ought to cover for other questions or anything left unsaid.
Thank you, Laura. And I know we're a little bit over on time. I see people dropping off, which is totally fine. If your question did not get answered, go ahead and drop it in there if you can stay on. If you cannot stay on, go ahead and submit that through the online inquiry form that Laura just went through, and we will be happy to go through that with you. We know we gave you a lot of information on this last one because, again, the last one of the year, we wanted to get all this good stuff in. But if you have things that you need to discuss with the coordinating board, for sure, reach out. We will make sure to get back with you. But if you want to stay on, we'll stay on for a few more minutes and go through any pending questions with y'all. But as far as the online TASA goes, I did see a lot of questions on things like, fancy bells and whistles. And trust me when I say we have every intention to make it awesome. Just keep in mind the Department of Ed has 20 years up on us on development and technology. So please be patient as we work through and create something that will work for institutions and students. But we are trying to get that out to y'all so that you can start using it. And then in future years, we'll continue to make enhancements on it. So that's all we have. Let's see. If you have questions on anything else, feel free to stay on, but I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll stay on for a few more minutes. But have a wonderful rest of your year. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. We will see you soon. So thanks again for all your support and participation in these webcasts. Thank you.